Go ahead and introduce yourself.
I'm sorry, I can't tell. I am Dr. Jamie Mara, which sounds so.
This is not a medical podcast, though. You did not click on the wrong channel. This is a 19. Yes, we didn't want to make sure, like, we're hoping for like help with our mental. We won't do that. We're going to be doing movies.
You can find me at psychologytoday.com. I'm a clinical psychologist, not an actual doctor. Don't take any medical advice from me or financial advice, and everybody will be good to go. Fine.
And I am only a doctor of funkonomics, so don't use this as well.
Are you going to this?
So the reason we're calling this the Midnight Special is me and Dr. Mara have been friends for over 30 years, and our best conversations usually happen between midnight and 3 a.m., since we're both insomniacs. But this and also the Midnight Special is a song that is in the Twilight Zone movie, the beginning of it. So that's one of the things we'll be talking about. But this is a 1980s film podcast, a love of the absolute lunatic films that we love from the 1980s.
Only an 80s kid with a latchkey 80s kid could really love.
100%. We watch these films when we shouldn't be watching them. We had no business watching these films between the ages of 8 and 12, but yet we did. It is the perfect era when people did not know what was on HBO or TBS or what you could get at Blockbuster. People would just go to Blockbuster and you'd rent. Here's an R-rated film, kid who's only 4 years older than me, and he was like, "Cool, stamp. Make sure it's back to
Just make sure you rewind it.
Yeah, that's all I gotta do is rewind." So the 80s are very special. It is considered the worst decade in the history of film as far as Oscars go. As far as the Oscars go, it is a train wreck of awfulness. And the prestige films are awful. But when it comes to a couple other facts that we're going to get into, it is a great decade. One, it is the greatest decade of children's films that are live action, between E.T., The Goonies, Flight of the Navigator. It's the best decade ever for that, but it is the worst decade for Disney as far as non-live action films. For cartoons, it was the worst decade. It was the decade of gratuitous, why is this nudity in the film, which we'll hit on a couple times on this show. Not with this film, thankfully, although close. The maid's outfit.
That maid's outfit, very...
It's so close to being
so close.
Nudity, but it's not. And then, of course, just because the 70s were all about great directors, we went back to producers in the 80s, and these producers were all on large amounts of cocaine. And that's just something we're going to have to deal with in these films as we go through them. And our first one is the film that I think is the first basis of our friendship, I want to say, unbelievably. We were two band kids, and I really want to say that Dr. Morrow is the one that said, communism is nothing but a red herring to me. And my eyes just lit up. And we were both.
Knew. Then it was
we knew it. And it was like 35 minutes later, we were both in a coma, just saying, ridiculous lines, just back and forth. So we're doing The Clue first. It's an important movie for both of us. And it is one of those lost gems of the 80s. And I think that's one of the big things for this podcast, is talking about films that people just don't watch enough. Yes, the 90s were much better. Yes, the 70s is the greatest decade in history of film, but the 80s had some really interesting stuff going on. Again, mostly done by cocaine addicts. Okay, so Jamie's gonna give us a little background on this film from 1986.
So this wonderful film was actually developed. It was one of the first movies ever developed based on a board game, which people were like, that doesn't make any sense. Why would you ever want to make a movie out of a board game? Oh, come on, Annie. Sorry, my cat. And it was actually, I believe it was a Landis.
Yes.
Yeah, it was a Landis idea. It was his baby. And he wanted to create it, and he had this idea in mind. He very excitedly... Imagine what it's like to be my therapy patient. He went to several writers, who I believe that one of them that he went to said they worked on it for a year and then hit a wall and was like, it's a famous person, but
Tom Stoppard.
Thank you.
Yes.
He sent back all the money that he had been paid already. He sent it back to them. And then they approached Steven Sondheim and Anthony Perkins, who were super excited about writing the movie, but they wanted an insane amount of money. And Paramount was like, "Are you serious?" No. And they were like, "Who are these people?" And Landis was like, hello, it's Sondheim. And they said, no, thanks. So then he got really excited about Jonathan Lynn, and he was mildly, pretty famous at the time. He would go on to become more famous well after Clue, but he got really excited about the script. This is one of the most quotable movies and one of the best movies of all times. You can't find a bad line in this movie, and it was all written by Lynn. And he was a by-the-book writer. And then, of course, as we know, he went on to become the director, because by the time he was finished writing it, Landis had agreed to direct Spies Like Us, which was a huge, huge Hollywood money-making machine. They were very excited about it, and he said, I've got this idea, Lynn, why don't you both direct and write? You don't turn something like that down.
Right.
So he decided to take the offer. And then that's how Landis became the producer. And it's pretty interesting how much Landis believed in Lynn and how Lynn really took that and ran with it, which is pretty awesome. So
one of his films after this was My Cousin Vinny. So
which is another fantastic movie.
So yeah, he went on to do some really big blockbuster comedies after this, which is really interesting that he had to kind of be coerced into directing this.
But what's interesting is, right, for sure. But what's interesting is this movie was such a flop in the box office that he had no jobs for a while. It's amazing he got the job to be the director of My Cousin Vinny and several others after that. But he cast the cast. He was the cast I could talk about for a long time.
We're going to, so yeah.
Absolutely. And of course, as we know, when Clue came out in movie theaters, they had each of the endings was their own movie, they had their own theater, and you bought tickets to see Clue A, Clue B, or Clue C. And those were each of the three endings, right? Yeah. And that was horrifically offensive to the critics and the audience. I can understand that. And it did not get very good reviews at all. And then it became a cult classic.
I think the biggest problem for box office was that none of these people had ever led a movie. As hard as that is to believe, that for most of them, they were the third, fourth name in any movie. Like you think of, Christopher Lloyd, probably the highest he got to being the star of a movie was probably Back to the Future. He was the second.
But it wasn't out yet.
Eileen Brennan was, third fiddle, and Private Benjamin, Madeline Kahn was probably third or fourth in a lot of Mel Brooks movies. But none of these people are people you could say you can carry a film. And I think they thought the game was going to carry the film. I think they thought the star is the game.
That's true. With Jonathan Lynn was very faithful to the game. But I will say this. I didn't know this. Lesley Ann Warren had just come out of her getting her first Oscar nomination. I didn't know that. For Victor Victoria. So
also the wife of one of the producers. So, interestingly enough.
Nepo baby in her own way.
Yeah, she's a Nepo baby. Gotta love it. But yeah, it's such an interesting cast, and they all work so well together because they're all used to this kind of company thing of being in a company. And the chemistry, but there's no twosome that is not hilarious. To me, the scene that best shows that these people just know what they're doing is it could have been just a throwaway scene, but the matchstick scene in anyone else's hands would have not been funny. But it's the funniest 25 seconds because just them doing this and figuring out
what is so brilliant too is how, for example, Colonel Mustard, who plays the Dimmest character, for example, there's some of them are holding matchsticks that are this big, and they're holding it up against somebody who's got the biggest one, and they're they're going through the motions of that, but and Lesley Ann Miss Scarlet, when she gets matched with Colonel Mustard, she goes, oh. And in Professor Plum, Christopher Lloyd, he says, "It's your me, honey bunch."
Oh, so great. No, but that's that to me, it could have been one of the things we're going to talk about is how much this movie probably played a role in Knives Out. I think for Rian Johnson, it's a major movie.
For sure.
And I don't think you could have huge stars like that make that scene as funny as these purely character actors do. They're so good at it. Like they're so good. Each they could have done this movie 4 times when they do each pair differently. It would have still been funny. I mean, yes, Yvette with the supposed gay guy is the funniest male she could be with, obviously, and of course,
yes.
it's really the perfect pairing in each case. But I do think that the box office, again, it became a moneymaker once it went onto videos, like most movies in the 80s, and of course, it was on HBO every day when we got home. And that's something that we have to talk about with this movie is like, should we have been watching this? Like, should we have been allowed to watch this movie? Now, of the movies we're going to watch over the next, months and years, this one is probably one of the tamer ones, but at the same time, Yvette's costume is nuts.
Absolutely. But here's the funny thing. If it wasn't for kids like you and me, for example, this movie would not have become the cult classic that it was. Although ultimately it was up to the networks that decided to air it cheap because it was a cheap air time thingy. But they didn't know the gold mine they had. We discovered it.
So I would say, like, we're gonna do this every show. What are the things that we should not have been seeing? This is one of the tamer ones. Yvette's costume. Mr. Green. I mean, Mr. Green being gay than not gay would probably be the only other thing. Is there a line that when you watch it now, you're like, I did not understand that line one bit?
Great question. Well, communism is red herring.
Yeah.
For sure. And at the time, like all members of the oldest profession, I'm a capitalist.
Yes.
I don't get that. At the time, I didn't understand what she was talking about.
All the brothel stuff was. I was like, what? Like, it was crazy to me. But it's such a great cast. I mean, Madeline Kahn.
And all the psychiatry stuff. Yes. Yeah. Now that I'm very familiar with it, but
so there's a couple places where different actors could have been in this film that weren't. If you want to go into that a little bit.
Yeah. So there was a number of people who were supposed to be cast. Of course, Tim Curry was the third choice, which is incredible. He did not know that actually until somewhat recently, in the last 10 years. I don't know if I'm glad or not glad that he didn't know that, but he is Wadsworth. He is perfect. Yeah. He has also said that he was exhausted after filming every day. Of course he was. The majority of the movie is him running down the hall, like hysterical and like hyperventilating.
That last 25 minutes is nuts when you watch it now and realize that.
Yes. That's one person. Yes.
But the two other actors, one of them was John Cleese.
And Leslie Warren and Colleen Camp, right?
Yeah.
So Colleen Camp, Miss or Yvette, she's the most interesting one, but Leslie Ann Warren was supposed to be played, or her character, Miss Scarlet, was supposed to be played by Carrie Fisher.
Yeah.
And then Carrie Fisher was, I know that you're aware of this, but Carrie Fisher was in rehab. And what's interesting is she was given the part, and Jonathan Lynn says that he was very naive at the time. He had met her at a restaurant, and she had fallen over a chair, I think is what he said. Yeah. And he just thought she must be a little clumsy or something like that. And then when he found out that she wasn't going to be able to make it initially because she was in rehab, he was shocked. He was the only one apparently who was shocked. So he called, I think, the producer. And the producer was also using cocaine, according to Lynn. Yeah. And she was like, that's fine. And Carrie Fisher had said, I'll come during the day and I will film the scenes and then I'll just go back to rehab at night. And he was like, okay, great. And it finally got to executive, I think, at the.
Well, they couldn't get insurance, basically.
Oh, that's right. It was the insurance. Yeah. It was the insurance company. They were like, are you out of your mind? This is not happening. He was like, oh, crud. So then here comes Leslie Ann Warren. And then Colleen.
Who was the producer's wife at the time? Peter Guber's wife.
I did not know that.
We're gonna be talking about Peter and Guber's a lot in this show. They're the mega producers. They did Top Gun and a bunch of other things, and they are the cocaine cowboys of the film industry. And yes, Leslie Ann Warren got the part because she was. I can't see Carrie Fisher in this part.
I cannot. No.
I don't understand it. It doesn't make sense to me. I mean, this is the era where she basically wrote the book that became the Meryl Streep movie, Living on the Edge, with Meryl Streep and Shirley MacLaine. This is the era that she was writing about, and she was, it's 3 years before she finally kind of came back with When Harry Met Sally. So it's just in the middle of it. And
That's
the other
true.
funny thing is Eileen Brennan is getting out of rehab as Carrie Fisher's going in. I wonder if they met at the door.
I know.
Because Eileen Brennan, Mrs. Peacock, is
Hey, see you later.
yeah, it's like, oh yeah, I'm going to Clue. I'm leaving Clue, and then
before we get to Colleen Camp, I want to say
yes.
this about Leslie Ann Warren, that I can't imagine, even if, however she got cast as this, she's brilliant. And when I was growing up, I only wanted to be Miss Scarlet. That's all I wanted to be, because she was the prettiest, in my opinion. I wanted, and that the costume designers,
Yeah.
they made her struggle. That dress was so skin tight, and they made her wear a corset or a bodice, I think.
Yeah.
And she couldn't even sit down. That's how tight it was. But my 10-year-old self was like, this is the most beautiful woman I've ever seen. I want to be just like her. And I can't imagine. And she's so dry-witted and so hilarious. So I'm sorry.
No, I think there are times where it feels like her and Wadsworth are a comedy team, or like they're a mystery team where they're solving things. And because she just knows more than the other characters, even when it's not her turn to be the murderer, there are times where she's the only one that's in on the joke with Tim Curry, and it's a really interesting performance because of that. I think, like I was telling you earlier, I think all three women do such a great job of making this feel like a 1940s mystery, like something that Le Carre wrote, or like it's funny because we didn't see those for like 5 years at that point, because we didn't see them a lot. But there's like the old ones with Perot and stuff that are so fantastic. But three of them all just. But she is so good in this. It's hard to believe she wasn't the first choice. Let's go ahead and get to Colleen Camp, because the names that could have been this part are phenomenal. Because Colleen Camp is a B-level career actor. She's had a great career, but these three names are phenomenal. Go ahead.
So yes, she fought really hard to get the part. The three other women who wanted the part were Jennifer Jason Leigh, Madonna, and Demi Moore.
Yeah.
It's hard to imagine. It's incredible to imagine in 1984, when this movie was cast and when it was filmed, that anybody could have beat any of those three women out. Jennifer Jason Leigh, she had not made Single Way Female yet, correct? Right. No, not even close. But she had come out of Fast Times.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Madonna's Madonna. If you've seen A League of Their Own, perhaps maybe, close call. But
Demi Moore would have killed this. Demi Moore would have absolutely killed this.
Yes.
She had the right haircut at the time. If you look at, she would have been phenomenal in this part. But I do think if you murdered her in that movie, it would have stopped the film for 5 minutes. You would have been like, I don't think you care about Colleen Camp enough to like, oh, she's like, because they keep killing people that are not the main cast. I think Demi Moore would have felt like main cast.
You're so correct about that. She also, I think that part would have been underwritten for her. And speaking of underwritten, Mrs. White, as written, was very much underwritten until Madeline Kahn was cast. But yes.
Yeah, we're gonna spend like 9 minutes on her when we get to it. But again, the other two people that were up for Wadsworth were the great Rowan Atkinson, Mr. Bean, and John Cleese. And I don't think either one of them had the right physicality. As much as Mr. Bean is a physical character, the way Tim Curry runs around that last 25 minutes is so great. It goes with the music. It's so good.
This may feel controversial, and I don't know, I'm going to ask you what you think, but I've been thinking about this a lot. It's with an ensemble cast like this, and I know at the time it wasn't really considered as much of an ensemble cast as it is now. I mean, it was, but my MVP of the movie, I think, is Tim Curry. It's hard to pick, but his comedic timing is outstanding. All the comedic timing is outstanding, but he worked so hard in that movie, and
it's a sweaty role. It's a sweaty role. And like when he says to Colonel Mustard, "Can you keep a secret?" and he goes, "Yeah, like so can I." It's just, there's so many line reads in this movie. Again, it's gonna get crazy, but I agree with you. At the same time, he's maybe the least quotable of the seven. Like if you consider the seven, I think if you like there, I rarely say Tim Curry lines. Now, again, there's one line that's above all else that we'll talk about that was ad-libbed. God bless her. But in some ways, Mr. Green is the most quotable in a weird way between I'm gonna go home and sleep with my wife, which is the last line of the movie.
A plant? I thought meant like, well,
yeah, that's
I'm
great.
a plant.
Again,
Yeah.
it's a little more. It's such a quick script. I mean, clearly Lynn had watched all like the early Alec Guinness films. It's so fast, all dialogue, and for two people that talk really fast, like the two of us, I think that's probably part of the pleasure for the two of us, is that they talk as fast as we do.
It's interesting. So before they even started to film, Lynn had them all over to screen. Oh, come on, My Girl Friday.
Yeah.
And he said, "This is the pitch and the pace that I want," and everybody locked it in from there. Yeah. And it also helped that the set and the formulation of the set made a big difference.
It's phenomenal. Yeah, but I would say the only one that I think is maybe slightly different movie is Christopher Lloyd. I think of all of them, as funny as he is, and he does some funny stuff, he's such an oddball as a person.
But that's the point.
Yeah, but it's just, I don't know, because all the rest of them, because Colonel, again, I mean, bless Martin Mull for willing to be the stupidest man in the room and be happy with it. Like the way he says, "I lost during the war, I lost my mommy and daddy." It is the dumbest line. It's just like, what adult says? Like, what adult says? "I lost my mommy and daddy."
What about the part where he's desperately trying to get Wadsworth to tell him whether or not there's anybody else in the house?
Yes.
No, there is, or no, there isn't.
It's just he's so good at playing that dumb role and stuff. Like, when he says, "This is war, Peacock."
Acceptable. You cannot make an omelet without breaking eggs. Every cook will tell you that.
But look what happened to the cook. Like, it's just, and again, like they're all so good. We can't do this. We can't just go into line. No, I'm saying we can't just jump into line mode like that. We'll be here till 3:30 in the morning. But it's really amazing. I do think it's so perfectly cast. The reason that these 6 character actors are so good at this, I mean, Michael McKean from Lenny and Squiggy and everything he does is phenomenal in this movie. And if there wasn't a person named Madeline Kahn in this movie, I think we'd talk more about him as Mr. Green. He's so fantastic. Like, just him and Camp on the staircase. This tight. There's no staircase this tight. He's like, I'm going first.
He's like, she's like when they try to go up the stairs and most of every single other male character in that movie would have been all over her.
Super happy. Yeah, that's such a great point about that scene, is they would all have been super happy to be in it, but that's the greatness of it. I just think there's something about Lloyd in that movie where he's very good and he pulls off, he's very good at being a lecherous doctor. But it's just, of all of them, I say, if I had to rank them from my favorite to least favorite, I would probably say Lloyd's probably my least favorite, then probably Mull, and then, Madeline Kahn. Madeline Kahn's the queen. I mean, as much as Eileen Brennan kills it, Madeline Kahn is just another level in this movie.
Another level. But what do you think about the casting of Mr. Body?
I didn't know, again, I was not into, I had saw him on SNL because I was an SNL freak, but I still didn't understand who he was. I think it was kind of like between him and, again, like I told you, I did not know that was Jane Wiedlin from the Go-Go's.
Neither. A long time.
Did not, and again, I love her part on Our Lips Are Sealed is my favorite vocal of that era. So it's just I had no idea that was Jane Wiedlin. I didn't know that Lee was from the band Fear. I think
metal group.
Yeah, I don't buy him as a butler. That's the part that I don't like. The fact that in reality he was my butler doesn't make sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
If they had like a John Cleese or a Rowan Atkinson in that part, or somebody who could be both a master and a servant, which I think is great about, like, if you watch Downton Abbey, there's actors in that show who could be both.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the only problem with him. I do not buy this guy as being a servant. Well, who would?
Yeah.
I would never enter a house if that guy was at the door as the butler. I'm like, I'm not going. You crazy?
Like Professor Plum and Miss Scruggs, like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that poor cook, she gets no lines. She's in the movie.
She gets dinner will be ready at 7:30. Is that the only line?
Yes. But she's just in the movie, and then like the cop and the lost highwayman and just all these kind of really cool character actors you've seen 1,000 times. It's such a great movie for that reason. But let's get into Madeline Kahn. Let's just do it. Let's just break open the scene.
Okay,
First off, the greatest line of all time. The thing that I think is 97% of the fact that we're still friends. And the fact that you have that shirt, if you want to show it and give your friend a shout out, go ahead and do that now.
I'd like to give Tad Roche a shout out for buying me this shirt. He bought me one for myself and one for my daughter, who was baby at the time. And he didn't sign it. So I spent a kind of like upwards of 6 months trying to figure out who sent me to get a box in the mail and to pull out this shirt. There was, because of my love of this movie, actually, I think you were the first person I went to. I said, did you send this to me? I don't think you do. I thought you were the first person who went to my mind. I said, it had to have been in. But I knew you didn't know my address, and it took kind of a while to find out. But thank you, Tad. And there's that. Yes, of course.
So yes, Madeline Kahn, from many, many Mel Brooks movies. She's in Young Frankenstein, hilarious. She's another level. She just is, as much as I think Eileen Brennan as Miss Peacock gets it, and I think Warren gets it. She's just another level. When it's completely, the flame scene is completely ad-libbed, and I forgot how late it is in the movie. I kept thinking I fall asleep and I forgot it. The movie's so fast, and she's just, as soon as she goes, yes, I hated her
so much.
So the way her voice goes. She's such a genius.
She's the only one in this entire movie who was allowed to ad-lib. She's the only one who's allowed to improvise. And they only did 3 or 4 takes. And you see, as it pans to the different characters, they're all like, I remember Professor Plum is one of them they pan to, and Colonel Mustard, they're just like dumbfounded. But in all the takes, they said they're all, they can't stop laughing.
It's the greatest. It's the greatest.
I'm going to step outside and I'm going to become
it's a meme. Go ahead.
Sorry. So I'm going to become Mrs. White. Hold up.
Yes.
I'm Mrs. White, pale and tragic. Okay.
Yes. When he calls her pale and tragic, that's such a throwaway line, but it's so funny. But again, when she goes, yes, I hated her, and then she pauses, and her voice goes up too. She goes, so much. Flames. On the side of my face. It's such magic. It's such magic. I think she's so brilliant. Like, just the line, men are like Kleenex, disposable, and like when she goes, that was your second husband. Like, yes, my first husband. Yeah, he was he was an
illusionist, but he never did.
Well, he's not a very good one. Like,
he was a very good illusionist.
Oh, she's amazing. She is amazing. Just
how many husbands have you had? Mine or other women's? 5. Yes, just the 5.
Just the 5. Just everything she does, and just her, and just and just that, like, weird. Like, she screams, and then Green says, "Stop doing that," and she screams again, just for the pure joy of that cast. Probably it's just like she just does stuff that, again, just the whole thing, and just the outfit and the hat and everything. And she just gets it on a different level. But she also gets that they're making fun of these things, and I think it's the reason why. If the Knives Out crew watched anyone, it had to be her. If you've seen the second one, Glass Onion, they understand the assignment, to quote a song. She's so perfect in this, and again, it
was not a hard casting call for her, was it?
Oh, no, it's. When you work with Mel Brooks that much, and when when you're in Blazing, again, there's no female in the 1970s that could do Blazing Saddles without feeling offended. I mean, there's just not. There's not a woman that could do as much as Terry Garr is very funny in Young Frankenstein. She's not Madeline Kahn. She's not.
No, and just can't even put them in the same.
It's it's a shame. It's so sad, because like you look at something like her in Murder in the Building, like just the number of hilarious character parts she could have done in the 2000s. I mean, Brennan too, but she has her Oscar. Again, Madeline kind of never got hers, but just the look at the fact that she knew exactly who she was playing every second. That haircut is perfect. Everything about her is absolutely perfect. Again, just everything.
Well, you know what's interesting is that one of the things about the movie that I think is really interesting is that, especially with Madeline Kahn's part, for example, they're all the actors are like cracking up, and they are completely amused that one of the one thing that actually Michael McKean did at the start, before every single take, before every scene, was he said, something terrible has happened here, to remind everybody what they were doing here, to get them out of this silliness, even though it was quoted as a silly ass movie. That he had to bring everybody back to the seriousness of it.
I don't think. I think his early career, unlike Madeline Kahns, is the most unfair because we think he's Lenny. We really do. We think we don't understand, and then he goes on and does something like Better Call Saul, where he is, again, Emmy-winning, he's the best. He's the best actor on
You've
set.
got a great actor, a phenomenal actor. They can play multiple roles just like that.
And can also make a thing like sitting on a table because all the chairs are gone, and make it that funny. It's just
Mr.
everything
Bobby
he does.
Thought they were all thoroughly un-American, and then Mr. Green, Michael McKean, just falls, like just collapses the table. It's great physical comedy.
And then I mean he's just I would say I would put Madeline Kahn first. I would put him second, then Eileen Brennan. Eileen Brennan, when he reveals that his wife is a socialist, like by the way, everyone else in that movie is worse than that. Like everyone else,
at the time.
Murders. People have caused murders. People have caused horrible things to happen to other people. Madeline Kahn's a murderer, first off, and then all he says is, "My wife had friends that are socialists."
Socialist, but he ekes it out.
He might as well said. He might as well said, "My wife killed me," because he goes, like, just horrified.
He's disgusted.
She's
I didn't actually, back when we were like 10 years old, I didn't really understand McCarthyism and communism as much, but I was like, whatever this means, whatever it means, it's pretty terrible. But, and what's interesting is while Eileen Brennan is scoffing, Mrs. White is pretending to cry. She walks up to Wadsworth and she's like, it's pretty awesome.
But part of what is interesting about this is by the point they made this movie, J. Edgar Hoover was a joke. Like, he was not the feared figure. He was a cross-dresser, and all the things he did were, so they're making fun of that at the same time. They're making fun of McCarthyism. They're making fun of all these things from this point of view of, like, we were scared of it. Why are we scared of this? Why are we scared of freedom? And it's just, just the way she just goes, like, she's just again, like, it's been revealed this guy had sex with patients, and like, all these things, this guy goes to hookers. And the first time she reacts to anything is that my wife was friends with socialists.
Yes. But you know what? Actually, I feel like Eileen Brennan Mrs. Peacock acts like she's the moral center of the group, and despite all this, because when it's revealed that Miss Scarlet runs a brothel, she goes, "Oh, how disgusting!" And that's what he says. "Are you making moral judgments, Mrs. Peacock?" And she's she's the one who's in denial. And she thinks she's, doing perfect and wonderful.
Well, when they do her finale, which is the first of the three, there's a couple things. The first thing she says, in the last ending, she actually also yells at, "I'm a senator's wife. Like, how dare you do this to me?" But she had the funniest thing she does in the movie is when she tells Howard Hessman to leave the house. Like, get out of here.
I can't take that part. That part is so funny.
He's amazing.
Whoever it is, they've got to go away or they'll be killed.
Go.
That whole scene kills me.
It's so great.
I knew him from Head of the Class. I know not everybody, but one of my roommate when I was an intern in the Tampa VA, name's Allison. Allison also was a word for word Clue fanatic like us, and one day, a couple years after our internship, after she moved on and I moved on, I just one day randomly put on our Facebook I posted on our Facebook, "Have you ever given any thought to the kingdom of heaven?" I thought that was one of the funniest things I've ever done.
Again, the fact that it's only he's in all three endings, but he only has that really big scene with Eileen Brennan, and she's just, when she's like, "You have to get out of here," like, she's so great. She's, again, I would say there are definitely times I've watched this movie where I think she's the second best performance, but like right now I'm in a Kahn, Michael McKean, Eileen Brennan phase, and then very close Warren, who, again, for being the last one hired, she so gets this style. She's definitely someone who watched a lot of Katharine Hepburn movies and watched a lot of these movies where, like, His Girl Friday and these things where it's like,
she's elegant, and also she's elegant, but she's dry and ill and kind of, I can't think of the word, but she's got the character, she's got the timing, and I think this might be my envious like 10-year-old, ugly 10-year-old self, wishing that I was as pretty as her, and thinking, that was the thing at that age. I felt like, well, it's social psychology too. The more attractive you find a person, the smarter you think they are, the more socially acceptable they are, et cetera, et cetera. Right. But I thought she was brilliant back in the day.
Yeah.
I still do, but
yeah, they all hit out of the park. Again, this movie's amazing. My question to you at this point is this: there's only been one other movie based on a board game since this, which is Battleship, which was horrid. If you could pick a board game to be made into a movie in the next 5 years, what board game would it be?
Oh crap. My brain is getting flooded by a number of different board games. Every board game that comes to my mind sounds terrible as a movie. Like everything. And I keep thinking of only board games that are quoted in other pop culture references, like Yahtzee and Boggle. And but you know what? I'm gonna sound unoriginal and boring, but probably Trouble. I'm gonna go with Trouble. Or
I am surprised, not in our childhood, maybe in the next generations, there is not a Chutes and Ladders movie.
Okay, I was thinking Candyland at first. I will say
Candyland's another one. Yeah.
Those are magical years. Yeah. When you are excited by Candyland, Chutes and Ladders, and Connect Four, when you can fall for Connect Four, you're in a different.
It took me probably to my mid-20s to realize, oh, Candyland did that so you didn't have to count. I was like 23 before I realized, it's a color. So you didn't have to roll a dice and count. You just would pick a color, and it was the next color.
That's why it's for ages 3 and up.
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
There's no dice involved with that game.
I have all those games. I just moved them when I worked with kids. But all my work stuff is right over here, and I have those games right there. But what would you say?
I would say Candyland or Chutes and Ladders. Chutes and Ladders, I am surprised, was not like a bad, before there was the Hunger Games. There should have been like a Hunger Games based on Chutes and Ladders.
Worse than that long way down.
Oh yeah, you cry every time you quit.
Or how boring the game got if you got the ladder all the way up at the beginning. When you land, that's made the game so boring.
Also, Mousetrap took too long. I've never finished a game of Mousetrap in my life.
Life. Hello, we're not talking about life.
Oh, jeez. Oh.
That would have, I guess that's.
I don't want 6. I don't want 5 kids. What are you doing to me? Stop it. What are you doing? I don't want 5 kids.
It's like the egg game or the egg task in high school, which we never had to do, but great task assignment in school.
What year in your life did you figure out communism is nothing but a red herring? At what age were you?
Like 30.
30.
35. And it was so late in my life that I had to Google it, and Google was a thing.
Right. We had no guys. We had no Google as children. We were deprived.
Okay, so how were you supposed to know? What did we do back then? Were you supposed to have a good history teacher? Were you supposed to have a parent who was a really good history? What, encyclopedias?
I do the middle school version of grad night every year. And I'm amazed. I think back to when we did these things, and I go, we had no phones, and we all somehow showed up at the right time at the bus. How do we? I don't know how we did that.
I don't either. And
they just let us out. They just let us out into Busch Gardens.
No, we grad night
at 5.
Was
I'm not talking about grad. I'm talking about when we were in middle school, and it's it's Busch Gardens, and it's it's 8:30. Be back in 9 hours. No one got lost. No. It was Paul Jenkins didn't end up dead. It was amazing.
What did we know about timing either? If you had your Swatch watch, which my mom gave me a Swatch watch as one of her for a Christmas present. It was her guilt gift on Christmas Eve. She went out and got me a Swatch watch. But unless we didn't have any of this stuff back then. I don't know how we told time.
Okay, so you told me that today was the first time you found a blooper in the movie after watching it probably over 300 times. And I want to see if it's the same one. The blooper that you found today for the first time ever?
Yes. Okay, so let's see if we have the same one that we caught.
Okay.
So mine is towards the end of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
and it's uttered by Miss Scarlet. No,
Yeah.
we have different ones, and we figured
Okay,
out.
don't say it. I maybe think something different. Hold on.
Okay, so I was watching it, and I paused after watching it. Said to my husband, I was like, "Wait a minute." Okay, when in the last ending where everybody's killed somebody, and Wadsworth says that it was Miss Scarlet who killed Yvette, and he goes, "True or false?" And she says, "True." Who are you, Perry Mason? Oh shit! Now as I'm saying this, Perry Mason was a show in '54, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
Damn it! Oh, I was so excited.
I think the one I saw is I think they screwed up the keys earlier in the movie than they do. I think there's a key screw up early in the movie that I caught this time. Like it didn't make the key thing didn't make sense at some point early in the movie. I can't remember. I just remember thinking, wait a second, but then I didn't go back to it because someone was hilarious.
No, I gotta know because several things just went to my mind. Which one was it?
I can't remember because I was so excited to be agreeing. I just like agreeing with you, so that's all.
That's very nice of you. I wish my therapist would say that too.
Okay, so as we're wrapping up, and again, this is the movie that cemented our friendship. How much cocaine was on the set of this movie? That's one of the questions we'll ask every week.
Okay, so as far as that question goes, and I love that question, especially in this genre.
Yes.
Everybody was on cocaine.
Yes.
In the entire, like, in all of Hollywood at the time.
Right.
However, I'm gonna say minimal on the set. Here's why. Jonathan Lynn did not do cocaine. He was a by the book.
Mm-hmm.
He wanted everything done a certain way. And Tim Curry also was very serious. They all laughed and joked around, and it was the era of cocaine.
Right.
And you would think that this is written by a bunch of cocaine addicts, because it's pretty fast paced and moving and exciting.
Yeah.
However, if you compare it to, let's say, something that I've identified from this exact era of time that I think I know for sure that cocaine was on set, and if you compare it to the music video by Bananarama for Cruel Summer.
Oh, Cruel Summer, yes.
Yes. And you can see there they were filming that when they filmed that music video, they were unknown. They came to Brooklyn, and in the first half of the day, no cocaine. Then around lunchtime, they ran into some people who gave them cocaine. Second half of the day, so from noon on, they have tons of cocaine, and it shows. Right. And you can see. Sure, it was less disciplined, but I'm just gonna say when you compare Bananarama and Cruel Summer cocaine to this one, I'm gonna say low. What do you think?
Okay, I would agree with you. I think it's probably too fast. There wasn't, I don't think it was fun to do cocaine in that little bathroom that they threw Michael McKean in.
They all hung out in the billiard room, like.
Yeah, I would too. I would if that was like a house you could buy, I would buy it and just Absolutely. Do that every day.
I want to ask you.
Have you ever been to a murder mystery party? Because I've never been to one. I just don't have these people in my life.
No, but I've watched plenty of TV shows. I mean, so there's like a Golden Girls episode about a murder mystery. I just don't think I could a Real Housewives episode. I don't think I could keep a straight face. I think I would be like, you can't compare it to Clue. But I would like to challenge you.
Yes.
To that.
We could definitely do this.
We could do this.
We could definitely do this.
We know our culture. Yes, John Stone in on this one. John Stone is our third brain.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. So on a scale of okay, so we're gonna rate all these movies on a scale of 1 to 5 trips to Betty Ford because it is the 80s.
What would you give it?
I'm gonna give it 5. I'm gonna absolutely give it 5. It's one of those movies that if you've seen it, you think it's the greatest movie ever. I've never had anyone who's seen this movie not love it. I've never met anyone.
I read it. I read somewhere, and I agree with this. It's the kind of movie where you either get it and you love it, or you don't. And but here's the thing. So I'm a Buddhist psychologist, so I love people, and I totally empathize, and and I have a lot of compassion. I struggle with the person who doesn't really care or get this movie because
I've never. If someone says they never seen it, I'm like, okay, But if they say they saw it and didn't like, I don't know what I would do with that person. I really don't. I'd be like, okay, you're a sociopath. Okay, well, that's fine.
Why don't we, when we have our band reunion in June, why don't we divide the group by if
I
you
agree.
like Clue and if you
I
don't
mean,
like
we also have to realize there's gonna be people there that are be like 10 years older than us, and then also like 15 years younger than us. This is
It's
gonna
not
be
an
a wide
excuse.
range. It's a wide ranging group. I'm
I
very
don't care. It's
terrified.
not an excuse. It's
Okay.
not an excuse.
So this was the
Keep
first
it there.
episode. Be sure to like and subscribe so you can find out our next episode. Our next episode will be on Amara favorite and a movie that I like as well a lot. Tom Hanks's The Money Pit. That will be our next episode. So thank you for viewing our first episode. Have a great day.